The encounter. The sun was low over the dry hills, its golden light falling across cracked earth and scattered stones. A single man walked slowly along a dusty path, his boots worn, his clothes patched from many repairs. He was a widower, living alone after war and sickness had taken his family. Each day he walked the edges of the wilderness, gathering herbs, searching for firewood, and sometimes just to escape the silence of his empty home. That evening, as the light faded, he saw something strange. In the distance, near a cluster of rocks, a shape moved. It was not human. He paused, heart beating harder. His people had whispered about shadows in the hills, about strange visitors from the sky, but he had never believed. He stepped closer, careful and slow. The figure came into focus, a tall, slender body covered in torn armor that shimmered faintly in the fading light. Its skin was pale, almost silver under the sun. Dark blood streaked across its side. The alien was wounded, collapsed on the ground. Breathing shallow, the man hesitated. His people had suffered because of outsiders before. There were stories of raids, of cruel traders, of war, but this creature did not look like a conqueror now. It looked like a dying traveler, alone and helpless. He reached into his leather flask and pulled it free. The water inside was warm. Not much left after his walk. He looked down at it, then back at the alien for a long moment. He thought of turning away. He had little and life was hard, but something in him, something deep, refused to let him leave. He knelt beside the alien. The being's eyes opened slightly. Strange, glowing faintly with a soft blue hue. Fear flickered there, but also pain. The man raised the flask slowly, showing it was not a weapon. He pressed it to the alien's lips, and the creature drank. The alien coughed weakly at first, then managed to swallow more. Its chest rose and fell with new strength. For the first time, its gaze locked with his, not with fear, but with something like wonder. He stayed by its side until the stars came out. He gave the last of his water, tore part of his sleeve to press against the wound. He said nothing, and the alien said nothing back. But in that silence, something passed between them, a fragile bond, made in the dust and under the stars. When the night grew colder, the man dragged brushwood and lit a small fire. He sat near, keeping watch as the alien drifted in and out of sleep. Every sound of the wilderness seemed sharper, every shadow deeper, but the man felt no regret. He had chosen, and his choice was simple: to give help when none else would. At dawn, when the first light broke, the alien stirred. It touched its chest weakly, then pressed its hand against its heart and looked at him. The man did not understand the gesture, but he nodded anyway. The alien stood with effort, then vanished silently into the hills, leaving only a faint trail of blood and dust. The man thought that was the end, just a strange meeting, a moment that would fade into memory. He gathered his things, refilled his flask at a stream, and returned to his small home at the edge of the valley. He tried to forget, but all day the image stayed with him, those glowing eyes, that fragile breath, the way it had looked at him that night. The silence of his house felt heavier than ever. He wondered if the alien had lived or died out there in the wild. He wondered why his heart felt less lonely after giving away the little water he had. But the story did not end there, because at sunrise the next morning the ground shook with heavy steps. The man stepped outside, eyes wide, for across the valley came shapes. Many shapes, tall figures with gleaming armor, carrying banners that caught the rising sun. They moved like warriors, their formation tight, their march unbroken. The man's throat tightened. Was this a raid? Was this revenge for the water he had given? His hands clenched, fear rising in him, but then he saw, at the front of the group, walked the same alien he had helped, alive and stronger, its wound covered, its steps steady, and behind it came others, dozens, maybe more, their eyes all fixed on him, and at the center of the formation was something he never expected, a figure carried with honor. Robed in silks adorned with ornaments, a young alien woman, radiant, walking with grace, her eyes met his, and though he did not understand, he felt the weight of their gaze. The tribe had returned, not with war, not with fire, but with an offering, an answer to his kindness. They had returned with a bride, the gift. The morning light spilled across the valley as the human stood frozen in front of his small home. His heart pounded as the alien warriors approached. Dust rose behind their steady march, and the ground shook under the rhythm of their steps. He had no weapon strong enough to face them, no wall to hide behind. Still, he did not run. Something inside told him to stand. The alien he had helped stepped forward. its armor now polished and shining. The wound he had covered with torn cloth was sealed with strange silver bands. It raised one arm, palm open, a sign of peace at that. The whole formation stopped. Silence fell heavy across the air, broken only by the calls of distant birds. Then the warriors parted, making way for the young woman at their center. She walked with quiet grace, her long robe shifting like liquid light in the sun. Ornaments of bone and metal hung from her arms. Glowing faintly with strange markings, her eyes, bright, calm, and unblinking, never left the human. The human swallowed hard, his throat was dry, and his flask was empty. He could barely understand what was happening. Why were they here? Why her? The wounded alien, now strong, stepped close and placed its hand on the man's shoulder. With the other hand, it gestured toward the woman. Then in broken words, it spoke in his tongue. Each word heavy and strange, but clear enough to grasp. You gave life, it said slowly. Water, heart, tribe, remember, we give gift, bride, bond. The man's chest tightened. He blinked, not sure if he had heard right. His mind raced. Bride? They were offering him their own. He had lived alone for years, no family, no children, only silence in his small home, and now strangers from the stars stood before him, offering a gift he could hardly believe. The young alien woman stepped forward. Her face was calm, but her eyes shone with something deeper, curiosity, courage, maybe even hope. She placed her hand gently over her heart, then extended it toward him. The gesture was strange, yet it carried weight. He could feel it even without words. The human's breath trembled. He remembered the stories of his people, tales of alliances sealed with blood, of marriages made to keep peace. Was this the same? Had his simple act of giving water changed the course of his life? He shook his head slightly, stepping back. I don't understand, he whispered, his voice cracked. The alien who had spoken tilted its head, then tried again. You give. When you have little, you help. When others turn away in our way, life debt, life gift, his answer. The tribe watched in silence. Their many eyes glowed faintly. Some carried spears of crystal, others heavy shields. They were ready for anything, except it seemed violence. No one raised a weapon, no one shouted. They only waited for his reply. The human felt the weight of their gaze pressing down. His heart was heavy with doubt. He had been alone for so long, grieving in silence, hiding from his own pain. Could he accept this? Could he open his heart again? The alien woman, still silent, stepped closer until she was only an arm's length away. She looked at him not as a prize, not as a bargain, but as someone she wanted to know. Her hand hovered near his chest, not touching, waiting for his choice. The man's voice shook as he whispered, Why me? The first alien, the one he had saved, answered with a firm voice. Because you gave when it cost you. Because you did not turn away. Because you are worthy. The human closed his eyes for a long moment. He remembered the silence of his home, the empty chairs, the nights without laughter. He remembered the weight of loneliness that crushed him day after day. And now before him stood a chance, strange, terrifying but real. When he opened his eyes, the alien woman was still waiting, her hand still hovering, her gaze steady, her tribe still watching. Their silence was not pressure, but respect. They would not force him. They would only offer, slowly, with a trembling hand. The man reached forward and placed his palm against hers. Warmth spread between them, not just of flesh, but of something unseen. Her eyes softened, and for the first time her lips curved into a faint smile. The tribe let out a sound, not a cheer, not a cry, but a deep hum, low and steady. It rolled across the valley like thunder, a sound of approval, of tradition fulfilled. The man stood in shock. His life had shifted in a single heartbeat, from loneliness to something new, something unknown. And as the alien woman stepped closer, the tribe began to prepare. For this was not only a gift, it was a bond, one that would tie a man and a people together. The human realized he had given water once, but in return he had been given a future. The trial of trust. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp light across the valley as the human stood surrounded by the tribe. His hand still rested in the alien woman's hand, and for the first time in many years, his chest felt less heavy. But even as warmth filled him, questions burned inside. Who were these people? What did they truly want? The alien who had once been wounded spoke again, its words still broken but more certain than before. Bond. Not simple gift. Must prove spirit, must show heart. Before tribe. The human frowned. His hand slipped away from the woman's and his voice trembled. Prove? How? I already gave water. I helped without asking. What more do you want? The alien's glowing eyes softened. Water. Saved one. Trust. Must save many. The tribe shifted, their armor gleaming like metal and stone. A sound rose from them, not quite a song, not quite speech. It was a ritual chant, deep and steady. The human could feel it in his bones. The alien woman stepped closer, her calm presence steadying him. She touched her own chest, then touched his arm gently, as if to say, "You are not alone." Soon the warriors parted again, revealing a great beast tied with chains of light. Its body was massive, covered in scales like rough stone. Its eyes burned red, and its breath came out in hisses of smoke. It roared, and the sound echoed through the valley. The man stumbled back, heart racing. The wounded alien explained in heavy words. "Beast. Threatens valley, takes food, takes life, tribe fights, tribe fails, now. Test if you stand with her." He gestured to the woman. "Tribe accepts. If you fear, bond breaks." The man's hands shook. He had no sword, no shield, only a small knife at his belt. His voice was raw. "You expect me to fight that? Alone?" The woman stepped forward. Her hand reaching for his, she shook her head slowly, then pointed at herself, then at him, and finally at the beast. Her meaning was clear, not alone. The man's chest tightened. He had lost everything before because he had been left alone. And now in this strange moment, this alien woman offered something different. She was ready to stand with him, even against a monster. The tribe released the beast from its glowing chains. The earth shook as it lunged forward. Its roar split the air. Birds scattered into the sky. Warriors raised their weapons. But none moved to help. This was his trial. The human's instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet rooted in place. He thought of the water he had given, of the life he had saved, and of the bond now offered. If he ran, he would return to silence. To loneliness. If he stayed, he might find belonging. The beast charged, its jaws wide. He drew his small knife, hopeless against such size. But before fear consumed him, the woman moved with a swift motion. She drew a curved blade from her robes, its edge glowing with faint blue light. She slashed at the beast's snout. Forcing it back, the man's heart pounded, and without thinking, he leapt beside her. Together they moved, not with skill, not with training, but with desperate unity. She cut and dodged while he struck where he could. His knife barely pierced the beast's scales, but each blow bought her an opening. The tribe roared their chant louder. Their voices lifted in waves. The sound became a storm of power. The human felt strength surge in his limbs, not from his blade, but from the trust that now bound him to the woman at his side. At last, the beast lunged again. Its jaws closing around him, he braced for death. But the alien woman shoved him aside and drove her glowing blade deep into the creature's throat. The beast howled, shook the ground, then collapsed in a thunder of dust. Silence followed, heavy and endless. The man coughed, his body aching. He looked at the woman, who stood over the beast with calm strength. She turned to him, eyes glowing softly, and reached out her hand once more. This time when he took it, he did not tremble. Their bond was sealed not by ritual alone, but by battle. The tribe erupted into sound, their chant becoming a thunderous cheer. Spears raised, banners lifted. They bowed their heads toward the man and the woman, not as strangers, but as one of their own. The human stood taller, breathing hard. His mind still could not believe it, but his heart knew. He was no longer just a man who gave water. He was part of something greater. And as the tribe's leader stepped forward, a heavy crown of bone and crystal upon their brow, the human realized that this was only the beginning of what his choice had awakened, the doubt. The beast lay silent on the ground, its great body still. Dust drifted in the air as the tribe's chant faded. The human stood beside the alien woman, his chest heaving, sweat dripping. His knife was dull and cracked, but his spirit was steady. For the first time in years, he felt alive. The leader of the tribe stepped forward, tall and strong, wearing a crown of bone and crystal. Their voice rumbled like thunder. The words were not his tongue, but the meaning carried through the air. Their people had seen his courage. They had seen the bond he had chosen. He was welcome now, not as an outsider, but as kin. The tribe knelt, pressing fists to the earth. The human's breath caught in his throat. Never had anyone bowed to him. Never had he been honored. But even as warmth filled his chest, he noticed not all faces were calm. In the crowd, some warriors looked with sharp eyes, distrust burning quietly. When the ceremony ended, the tribe led him to their camp hidden deep in the hills. Their tents shimmered like woven glass, Fires burned with blue light. Children stared at him with wide eyes, some laughing, some hiding. Elders watched with curiosity. Warriors whispered to one another. The alien woman walked at his side, her steps graceful, her hand brushing against his arm now and then. She stayed close, as if protecting him, or perhaps claiming him. Her presence was the only anchor he had in this sea of strange faces. But whispers grew louder. A group of warriors stood apart, their armor marked with scars of many battles. Their leader, a scarred figure with piercing golden eyes, stepped forward. He spoke sharply in his tongue, the words too fast for the human to follow. The air grew tense and the crowd hushed. The alien he had once saved translated slowly. He says, "You are weak, you carry no great weapon, you have no tribe. Why should we give one of ours to you? Why trust a stranger?" The human's heart sank. He understood too well. He was no warrior, no leader. He was only a man who had once given water. Was that enough? The golden-eyed warrior stepped closer, his hand resting on the hilt of a crystal spear. His gaze was hard, his voice cut through the air. "If you are truly worthy, prove again, not with beast, but with people. Stand against me, or leave," the crowd murmured. Warriors pounded their shields. The woman at the human's side tensed, her hand reaching for her blade, but he stopped her gently. His voice was low. "No, if I run now, I lose everything." He stepped forward, his body trembling. He had no armor, no glowing weapon, only his cracked knife and his will. The golden-eyed warrior circled him like a predator, his spear gleaming in the firelight. The duel began. The warrior struck with speed, his spear slicing through the air. The human barely dodged, the point grazing his arm. Pain shot through him, but he clenched his teeth and stood firm. The crowd shouted, some in anger, some in awe. Again the spear came, faster, stronger. The man could not match the warrior's strength. His knife clashed once, then slipped. He stumbled back, breath ragged. His mind screamed to surrender, to yield. But then he saw her, the alien woman. Her eyes burned with fierce faith. She did not doubt, not for a heartbeat. Her lips moved in silent words he could not understand, but he knew their meaning. Fight. Strength returned, not in his arms, but in his heart. He could not win with power, but he could endure. He dodged, rolled, let the spear strike air and stone. Every cut and bruise he took was answered with stubborn steps forward. The crowd gasped as he refused to fall, refused to yield. At last, the warrior lunged in frustration. The man stepped aside, using the moment to slam his knife's hilt against the warrior's wrist. The spear clattered to the ground. The human pressed the dull edge of his knife against the warrior's chest. Silence fell, only the fire crackled. The golden-eyed warrior stared at him, then slowly knelt, pressing his forehead to the earth. The tribe roared in thunderous approval. The human dropped his knife, shaking. His body was battered, his skin cut, but he stood tall. The alien woman rushed to his side, her hand gripping his arm, pride shining in her eyes. The leader of the tribe raised their voice. Deep and final, the words carried through every ear. Even his now, he is one of us, and in that moment, the human knew the truth. He had been tested not once, but twice, not just by beasts, not just by warriors, but by doubt itself. And he had stood his ground, yet deep in his heart, he also knew this was not the end. Something greater was still to come, something that would test not only his strength, but the bond between him and the woman he had been given. The true battle. The firelight in the tribe's camp burned bright that night. Warriors sang, children laughed, and the people spoke of the human who had stood against beast and blade. He sat quietly near the flames, his body aching, his arms wrapped in cloth where cuts still bled. Yet his heart was steady, warmer than it had been in many years. The alien woman sat beside him, her eyes soft but proud. She had said little since their battle, but her closeness spoke more than words. Her tribe now looked at him with respect, no longer as a stranger, but as one of their own. Still, he knew trust could be fragile, and peace could be broken in a single breath. As if the thought had called it, a cry tore through the night. A scout ran into the circle of tents, shouting words sharp and urgent. The people froze, their songs cut short. All eyes turned to the leader, whose face darkened with worry. The wounded alien, who had once first spoken his language, turned to him and said, "Enemy comes. Another tribe, not ours. They bring fire. They bring war." The ground began to tremble as shadows appeared at the valley's edge. Shapes carrying torches, weapons, and banners not of peace but conquest. Their voices rose in savage cries echoing against the cliffs. The human felt his chest tighten. These were not his enemies. not his people's. And yet here he was, standing among those who had claimed him. The tribe prepared quickly, shields lifted, spears glowing with faint light. The alien woman took her blade and stood ready. Her eyes fierce, the leader barked commands. Voices filled the night with urgency, yet even in their strength, fear flickered. This enemy force was larger. Stronger, the human rose, his body heavy with pain. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I will fight with you." The woman turned. Surprise in her eyes, he had no great weapon. No armor, only his spirit, but when she looked deeper, she saw the fire inside him. She nodded once, sharp and certain. The battle came like a storm. The enemy tribe poured into the valley with roars and flames. Spears clashed, shields cracked. The ground shook with the weight of war. The human fought with nothing but his knife and his will, striking where he could, blocking with his arms, pushing forward beside the woman. At one point, the enemy leader, a massive figure covered in bone armor, crashed into their line, swinging a heavy axe that split shields and scattered warriors. The alien woman rushed forward to meet him, her glowing blade clashing against his weapon. Sparks filled the air. Her strength was great, but the enemy leader was stronger. The human saw her stumble, the axe bearing down. Without thought, he leapt. His body slammed into the armored enemy, knocking him off balance. The axe grazed his back, pain tore through him. But he did not fall. He stood his ground. His knife struck again and again, not piercing deep, but enough to give her an opening. Together they moved as one. She drove her blade into the enemy leader's chest, and he shoved with all his strength until the figure crashed to the ground. The enemy tribe faltered, their cries breaking. Warriors of the alien tribe roared in unity, pressing forward until the invaders scattered into the night. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of burning torches left behind. The human collapsed to his knees. His body weak, his breath came in sharp gasps. Blood dripped from his wounds. The woman rushed to him, her hands gripping his shoulders. Fear and fire in her eyes, but he smiled through the pain. His voice was low but clear. "I told you I would fight with you." Her eyes softened, and for the first time she spoke in his tongue, the words halting but strong. "And I, fight with you always." The tribe gathered around, lifting their spears high. Their chant rose into the night. Not of trial, not of doubt, but of victory. They had fought together, and in their unity they had won. The leader of the tribe raised their voice, declaring before all, he gave water, he gave courage, he gave his blood. He is no longer stranger. He is family. The human felt the weight of loneliness leave him at last, his empty home, his silent nights, all seemed like shadows of another life. Now he stood not alone, but with a people who called him one of their own, and by his side, the woman who had been offered not as a gift of ritual, but as a partner in battle and trust in life. He had given water to a dying stranger, and in return, he had been given more than he ever thought possible. A tribe, a home, and a bride whose hand he would never let go. And so, under the stars of a world both strange and beautiful, a new story began. Not of loneliness, but of unity. Not of survival alone, but of love born from kindness.